Let's talk about the White House Correspondents Dinner. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that's why I am not in that room tonight, even though I was invited, because I don't want to sit in a room and pretend it's normal and sip champagne in black tie and ball gowns, pretending that this is normal when it's not. This is not normal Republican versus Democratic politics. The Trump regime is trying to take away press freedom. They are trying to kill the First Amendment. They don't believe in the First Amendment. And they don't believe in freedom of the press. Otherwise, they would not be arresting reporters. They would not be searching their homes. They would not be taking their cell phones.
Ready to rumble, is he not?
He is ready to rumble. I will tell you, this speech tonight will be classic Donald J. Trump. It'll be funny. It'll be entertaining. There will be some shots fired tonight in the room.
I'm at the Washington Hilton. I've been taken out of the main ballroom after the sound of the shots fired. The Secret Service is now in charge of this building, this hotel. I just spoke to Mayor Muriel Bowser. She is on her way, and Chief Jeffrey Carroll is on his way. He will be in charge as soon as he gets here.
Hey, John. I'm going to be honest, nobody knows what's going on, but you'll see there are people literally hiding under tables inside the ballroom of the Washington Hilton. We have seen many different security officers, some of them climbing over the chairs in order to get through this room. There are some people starting to stand up. I see some people walking out. You can see this is the center of the ballroom, the center hall, people walking out now. This commotion happened very suddenly. People dropping to the ground, some still hiding behind tables. Some chairs and people now getting up. One person injured, it appears limping with something on his leg, maybe from the commotion, okay? The people that were very shocked as they were falling to the ground trying to seek shelter under the table.
Look, we got to talk about what just happened at the White House Correspondents Dinner, because this whole situation took a turn that nobody expected. The way it's being talked about versus what people actually saw in the moment, those are two very different things. So the event itself, this is one of those big Washington nights where media, politicians, and insiders all gather in the same room, dressed up, cameras everywhere, and it's usually treated like a mix between comedy night and a networking event. And this year, what makes it different right away is that President Trump is actually attending, which is unusual because he skipped it in the past, and that alone already changes the energy in the room. And you got the tension, you got the anticipation, you got people on all sides trying to read into what this moment means. Now, and at the same time, you got voices outside the event saying they refuse to go, arguing that showing up would mean pretending everything is normal when they believe it's not. That's an important piece to this because it shows the divide isn't just political, it's also about perception. One group sees this as business as usual. Another sees it as something they can't participate in at all. And that contrast sets the stage for everything that follows. But then something happens inside the venue, and this is where things get confusing very quickly because reports start coming in about what sounds like shots fired. People dropping to the ground, others hiding under tables, security rushing in, and nobody in the moment really knowing what's going on. And you can hear it in the clips. People are speaking in real time, trying to process what they're seeing, describing chaos, movement, fear. And when you hear that kind of live reaction, it hits differently because there's no filter yet. It's no polish, it's not analyzed, it's just raw confusion. Now, think about that for a second. In a room full of some of the most powerful, connected people in the country, nobody has clear information in that moment. That tells you how fast situations like this can spiral and how quickly uncertainty takes over. And here's what people miss. The first version of a story is almost never the full story. In moments like this, you're not getting facts, you're getting fragments, people reacting, guessing, trying to stay safe. And yet those early moments often shape how the entire event gets remembered. And this is where it doesn't add up sometimes because the narrative can lock in before the details are even confirmed. I've seen multiple individuals say on one side that this was staged, that this is all fake. Erica Kirk crying, from the trauma of her husband, Charlie Kirk, rest in peace, my heart goes out to, the family, that, she's just faking the whole crying thing. When she has seen her husband be basically, erased from this world and the whole world seen it. And from my perspective, the real takeaway here isn't just what may or may not have happened in that room. It's how quickly perception forms under pressure. When something feels chaotic, people fill in the gaps, and once those gaps are filled, it's hard to undo. And this is how you end up with completely different interpretations of the same event. One side sees it as a shocking breakdown of security, another sees confusion that needs to be clarified, and somewhere in the middle is the reality that takes time to actually understand. This part matters because it shows how fragile our understanding of events can be in real time. And also, to take it a step further, it also shows now that the acknowledgement or the acceptance or the embracing of truth has eroded as narratives quickly become perception and individuals can be convicted in a court of public opinion. And and it's horrible such an event to take place on a beautiful event that was intended to be or intended to be. And a strong line to remember is this: when information moves fast, clarity usually moves slow. And another way to put it is the first story you hear isn't often the least complete, but the most influential. So before jumping to conclusions, it's worth paying attention to how these moments unfold, not just what people say about them afterward. So this is President Trump and others evacuating from the White House Correspondents Association dinner. You know, when the gunshots first start taking place, as I'm showing you guys on the screen as of now. And you see President Trump, Secret Service moving to get President Trump and those evacuating. I did see President Trump fall, because the whole main goal, I understand, with Secret Service, they're supposed to handle you aggressive to get you away from danger, right? President Trump did fall, but thank goodness the president is okay. And can you imagine the trauma, going through these individuals' minds, their family members, their loved ones? At the end of the day, take the political out of it. This is humanity. These are people who have families and loved ones, just like everyone else. So you've seen that. And President Trump did speak to it. He did say at first he mistaken it as a plate, because he have heard plenty of times plates crash into the floor or breaking, and it's very loud. But it happened to be gunshots, and some people picked up right up on it and others didn't. So I show you guys that, right, as individuals are climbing over tables, you see individuals not really knowing what's going on, right? They're still trying to fill it out. And you have some people ducking to tables already, and some people just sitting there, and you see Secret Service still moving and telling individuals to get down and stay down, and they're trying to all figure it out, right? So yeah, that's basically the synopsis of that. But now here's where things start to come into focus a little bit more. But at the same time, you can still feel how uncertain everything is in the moment. Reports began to come in that the Secret Service has someone in custody after shots were fired, and immediately you hear that shift in tone from confusion to controlled urgency. And when you listen closely to how it's being described, it sounds like whatever actually happened didn't take place inside the main ballroom where everyone was gathered, but close enough that it triggered a full security response. And that's the key detail here, because when you're dealing with an event like this, where you got the president, cabinet members, media figures, and high-level officials all in one place, there's no room for hesitation. The second, and just think about it, how quick these law enforcement individuals have to act, also in the drop of dime, and be trained to mentally, because it's fight or flight. Naturally, when you see something like this, an individual is trying to flee, right? Flight. But they are trained the opposite, to actually neutralize and go to the danger in the heat of a second. That takes full-on training, mind shifting of the mind. It takes a full-on mindset, a mind shift from flight to fight, and everything locks in instantly. And that's exactly what you hear. People being told to get down, agents rushing in, protectees being moved out within seconds. The president is escorted out almost immediately, along with everyone at the head table. And the room goes from a formal event to a full-on emergency response in a heartbeat. Now think about that. One loud bang, one unclear moment, and the entire environment flips. That tells you how these situations are handled behind the scenes. And honestly, it's probably the part most people don't think about until something like this happens. You don't know what to think in these moments. You may know what to think or what you should have done after, but everything is moving so fast. And from my perspective, what stands out here is how fast the system reacts when it's real. There's no debate, no delay. It's action first, questions later. And this is what it looks like in practice. And at the same time, you got different outlets and reporters trying to piece together what actually happened. And like we've seen before, the details don't all line up right away. Some say shots were heard. Others say it may have been outside. Some emphasize the suspect being caught quickly. And this is where it gets tricky because people watching from the outside are trying to make sense of conflicting information in real time. And this is where it doesn't add up at first because you're hearing multiple versions of the same moment, all incomplete in their own way. But here's what people miss. Early reporting is about speed, not precision. Accuracy comes later. Sorry, I got tongue tied. Accuracy comes later. And if you don't keep that in mind, it's easy to walk away with the wrong conclusion. And what we do know based on what's being said here is that whatever happened was contained quickly. Thank goodness. And the Secret Service did what they were trained to do. Neutralize the threat and secure the area before anything escalates. That part matters because the outcome could have looked very different if there was hesitation or confusion at that response level. Thank goodness all those individuals were safe. From my knowledge, and it has come to my knowledge that ballroom holds 1,000 people, 1,000 individuals in there. And the line to remember here is this: when seconds matter, preparation is what decides the outcome. Another way to think about it is you don't judge a response by how calm it looks, you judge it by whether it works. So as more clips and accounts come in, the goal isn't to latch on to the first version you hear. It's to watch how the full picture develops because this is how you end up understanding not just what happened, but how situations like this are actually handled when they unfold in real time.
The Secret Service has a person in custody after shots were fired at the Correspondents' Dinner. We are now just learning details. It is all brand new. Let's bring in John Roberts. He's on the phone with me right now. John, what can you tell us more about this shooting?
Well, it didn't appear to actually occur inside the ballroom where we're all assembled for this dinner. The president up on the dais along with the press secretary, the first lady, a number of other dignitaries, and, of course, literally every member of the cabinet inside the room, a lot of them sitting with us here at Fox. All we heard was the sudden rushing and commotion, and the Secret Service and all of the various agencies that protect people like Speaker Mike Johnson, who was here, came rushing into the room. People were told to get down. They started taking the protectees out. The president was whisked out of here in a heartbeat, along with everybody else who was on the head table up on the dais. It doesn't appear that anything happened inside the room. I'm hearing reports from inside the room here that if there were shots fired, it was outside of the room. But out of an abundance of caution, obviously, because you don't know if it's a single person or if there may be others attached to whatever happened, that they got everybody out of here. I've been to so many of these Correspondents Association dinners. Nothing even remotely like this has ever happened.
Yeah, guys. So now this is where the situation starts to feel a lot more real because you're no longer just hearing about a loud noise or possible shots. You're hearing from you're hearing from people who were right there, describing exactly what they saw and felt in the moment. And when you listen to those firsthand accounts, it paints a very different picture than the early confusion. You got someone explaining how they stepped out briefly, walked up toward the lobby area, and suddenly heard multiple gunshots at close range. Not far away, not down the street, right there. Then within seconds, law enforcement is on top of them, physically pulling them to the ground, moving them into a confined space, locking things down and treating it like an active threat with the possibility of more than one attacker. Think about that. You go from a formal dinner to being told to hide in the bathroom with a group of strangers, not knowing if it's over or just starting. And this is what President Trump had to say. Quite an evening in D.C.'s Secret Service and law enforcement did a fantastic job. They acted quickly and bravely. The shooter has been apprehended, and I have recommended that we let the show go on, but will entirely be guided by law enforcement. They will make a decision shortly. Regardless of that decision, the evening will be much different than planned and will just plain have to do it again. President Donald J. Trump. And that's the reality of how fast these moments shift. And at the same time, more details start coming in. Reports that the individual approached a security checkpoint, took shots at a Secret Service agent, and was engaged immediately. there's still uncertainty about the condition of the suspect in those early moments. But what's clear is that this wasn't just a random noise or misunderstanding.
We're seated maybe 50 feet from the stage where the president was up there, the First Lady Melania Trump.
Okay, then we have to stay here for now.
Security is telling us that everything's okay. The shooter, there was a shooter? 1 second, guys. I'm literally, what happened?
We're trying to identify it now.
Where was the shooter?
Somewhere out there.
In the lobby? In the lobby? All right, control. All right, guys. I just want you to know this is not verified. We're just listening to what's happening right now. But we have security around us, and it's Secret Service because there's a lot of members of the administration here. The Secretary of Education is seated right next to me, and her security just said, confirmed that there was a shooter in the lobby. It's not clear where. Obviously, it's a very big hotel. In the lobby of the Hilton. They said he is confirmed dead.
Are you able to hear us? I'd love to hear what your perspective is and what you can tell us.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. It's very, very worrisome what happened. Just coincidentally, after they served the appetizers, I walked out to simply go to the men's room, but you have to walk up these stairs and walk out, and which I was doing. And as I was walking back towards the door to get back into the big area where the event was taking place, all of a sudden, I start hearing gunshots in the hall right near me. And the next thing I knew, a police officer threw me to the ground and was on top of me. And I was listening and watching what was going on. And apparently they got the gunman who had a major weapon there. But it was so worrisome. The noise was so loud in a small area. And all of a sudden I'm seeing gunshots. And then they grab me, the police officers, and they take me back into the men's room where it was safe. And there were about 15 other men who are stuck in there, and they won't let them out. And that's what happened. And then after a while, they let me out, and I'm out now. I'm not back in the ballroom, but everything is apparently closing down. Very scary incident. All of a sudden, a guy with a weapon, and it was a very, very serious weapon, he starts shooting, and I happened to have been a few feet away from him as he was shooting. And, of course, the first thing that went through my mind is he trying to shoot me. And I don't think he was trying to shoot me, but I was very close to him as the gunshots were fired. And it was very, very scary, but I'm okay now.
Wolf, it's John Berman. Thank God you are okay. And thank you for calling to tell us you are okay and sharing this information. This is the first we're hearing of any of this, so I'm going to ask you to go over it again in great detail because you are the first witness that we have who has seen anything quite like this. So please, on a different floor than the dinner itself? And you did see a person.
When you walk out of the dinner, and to go up, you have to climb a few stairs, not an escalator or an elevator. You just climb a few stairs to go out into the lobby area outside of the ballroom where the dining area was going on. We had just finished appetizers, sitting down, and I walked away to go out to the men's room, but you have to go up one flight of stairs. So I was up one flight of stairs above the area where the dining was going on. And as I was coming out of the men's room to walk back in, all of a sudden I hear these loud, very scary gunshots right near me. And the next thing I knew, a police officer was on top of me, threw me to the ground, and I was waiting. And the next thing, a bunch of other police officers came and told everybody who was near me, you guys are all going into the men's room and closing the door. And they was afraid there were other potential gunshots that could be fired from other people. And so the next thing I knew, I'm in the men's room with about 15 other men. We're just waiting to leave, and eventually they let us walk out, and I'm out now, but they're not letting me go back into the dining area where the event was taking place. And I just assume the event is going to be canceled, at least for now.
No.
Too scary with a gunshot incident like this.
I have been in touch with top officials at the White House. This is what I can tell you. And the details are actually pretty specific now, that the shooter charged the magnetometer closest to the front door, took a shot at a uniformed division service agent. And he, at that point, They don't know whether they haven't confirmed if he's alive. Yeah, the shooter is in custody, I'm told, at this point. Everyone is okay. And the last thing I can tell you is that, the White House does not want him to go back, but I'm sorry, what? I'm having a hard time hearing. And anyway, the president does want to go back. The shooter took a shot at a Secret Service member just at the ballroom, which, Kevin, you raise a good point. How did he get it to that point? The agent returned fire. Nobody knows for sure at this moment whether he's alive or dead. And then it's created chaos in the room. But what we can tell you for sure is that this was, one shot, multiple shots at the closest magtometer closest to the front door, and took a shot at a uniformed division Secret Service agent. And anyway, at that point, we don't know the condition of him for sure. We do know the president was escorted to safety. Everybody in the room, I'm told.
Yep. So, family, when you look at this, right, and there's still uncertainty about the condition of the suspect in those early moments, but what's clear is that this wasn't just a random noise or misunderstanding. Something serious did happen, and it was contained quickly, but not before creating a wave of fear and confusion across the entire venue. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Even in the middle of all this, the conversation shifts almost immediately to what happens next. Do you continue the event or do you shut it down? And you can hear both sides of that thinking in real time. On one hand, there's this idea that you don't let violence interrupt public life, that you don't give someone the power to shut everything down, as President Trump has said. And on the other hand, there's the real security, the reality of security. If something just happened, you don't assume it's over until you know it's over. And from my perspective, both of those instances make sense. Because as you see here, President Trump, he has said law enforcement has requested that we leave the premises consistent with protocol, which we will do immediately. I will be giving a press conference in 30 minutes. This was yesterday. He did give a press conference to address the nation to calm things down. As a leader, you always want to calm things down and not ramp things up after a horrible event like this. But as he was saying, the press conference in 30 minutes from the White House press briefing room. The First Lady plus the Vice President and all cabinet members are in perfect condition. We will be speaking to you in a half an hour. I have spoken with all the representatives in charge of the event, and we will be rescheduling within 30 days, President Donald J. Trump. We did know that President Trump wanted to go on. We know how he is. We know the courage, the cojones that he has to go on. And from Butler, when the, I think it's the second assassination attempt, through his ear, and he said, fight, fight, fight. So we know the cojones and we know the courage that the president have. And, hearing this event, my heart dropped. At the end of the day, whether you like the man or not, he's human just like the rest of us. We all got something to work on. We all got flaws. And at the end of the day, nobody's perfect. And the simple fact is, I was hoping that his wife was right there to say, you're not going. But like I say, from both perspectives, those instances make sense, but they're operating on completely different priorities. One is about principle, the other is about safety. And when those two collide, safety is almost always going to win in the moment. This is why you see the decision shift towards shutting things down and securing the area, even if the initial reaction from some or from President Trump is keep going. Because here's what people miss. It's easy to say the show must go on. Sorry, family. It's easy to say the show must go on when you're not the one responsible, for making sure everyone gets home safely. If you imagine the trauma, Erica Kirk seeing that with the world witness for her husband, do you imagine the trauma that Melania Trump goes through? This is her husband, right? This is President Trump's family. And that responsibility changes how you look at the situation completely. A strong line to remember is just courage is important, but clarity is what keeps people alive. And another way to think about this is you don't prove strength by ignoring risk. You prove it by handling it correctly. Now, as more information starts to circulate, you also see something else happen. That's very common in moments like this. The rush to identify who the person was and what their motives might have been. And as you see here, the news was the attempted shooter at the White House Correspondents Dinner is 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen from Torrance, California. And he is in custody. So this is the guy, they say. Teacher, he's a teacher. Is him right here. So he's an educator. And this is the footage of the individual storming the guy Coleman. He basically was flying, man. He was flying through the security. For what I understand from President Trump said, our president said that they had 3 ways of security. He only got through the first one. But luckily it was the first defense of security and only the first defense. 2 layers before the ballroom. But this is the footage that was shared. You see him flying. He was running for it, man.
Shall I post it as soon as he passed down there? 18. Go for
So you guys seen that? Names start appearing, claims start spreading, people online begin connecting dots before those dots are even confirmed. And this is where things can go off track quickly because early information, especially in high profile incidents, is often incomplete or just flat out wrong. We've seen this before in other situations where initial reports get amplified and then quietly corrected later. But by that point, the narrative has already been taken hold. This part matters because once people look into a version of the story, it's very hard to walk that back. From my perspective, the smarter approach is to separate what's confirmed from what's speculation, especially when emotions are high like this. This is our leader. This is our president. The American people have spoke. They voted for President Trump. At the end of the day, it happened for a reason. Just like we can say the previous presidents, they were presidents because it happened for a reason. Cause and effect. So my heart dropped as our leader, who is leading our country, continues to be gone after by American people in some cases. But however, when emotions are high and the stakes are this serious, because this is how you avoid being pulled into conclusions that don't hold up later, pause for a second and look at the bigger picture. You got a high security event, a close range incident involving a weapon, a rapid response that likely prevented something worse, and a wave of conflicting information spreading in real time. That combination is exactly how situations become misunderstood. And it also raises the bigger question about how these stories get shaped after the fact, what gets emphasized, what gets downplayed, and how people interpret what it all means. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm just here to break this down so you can see it clearly for yourself,
This event is that it's very chaotic, it's crowded, and just as an example, as I was walking into the Hilton Hotel tonight with MS Now colleagues, I saw a person being escorted out wearing a ball gown that I believe was a member, I believe I recognized as a Code Pink activist, that protest group Code Pink. So a protester had put on a ball gown and kind of infiltrated the hotel. And that's the kind of thing that can happen in the chaos because they're not screening everybody who walks through the door of the hotel, even though they block traffic for blocks around the hotel. So the security is uneven, essentially, and it's a chaotic situation, and there are thousands of people, some of whom...
At the end of the day, the key takeaway from this part of the story is simple. When something is serious happens, the truth doesn't come all out at once. It comes in pieces, and what you do with those pieces matters. Now, this last part adds something important that kind of ties everything together because it shifts the focus from what just happened to how could something like this even happen in the first place. And what you're hearing is someone describing the environment itself, crowded, chaotic, a lot of movement, a lot of people coming in and out, and more importantly, not everyone being screened the same way. And that details matter more than it might seem at first, because when you have an event like this with high profile officials, media, and large crowds all mixing in the same space, the assumption most people have is that security is airtight across the board. But what's being described here is something a lot more uneven. You got heavily secured zones, and then you got areas that are more open where people could blend in, move around, and potentially get closer than they should. An example they give, someone dressing up, blending into the event, getting inside without drawing attention. That's not necessarily unusual for big chaotic gatherings like this. But when you combine that kind of environment with a high stakes security situation, you start to see where the gaps might be. It's not always about breaking through a wall. Sometimes it's about walking through a space that isn't as tightly controlled as people assume. That's how you end up with situations where someone could get closer than expected before being stopped. And to be clear, based on everything we heard, law enforcement did respond quickly and likely prevented something worse. That part shouldn't get lost, but at the same time, it raises a bigger question about how these events are structured and whether the setup itself creates vulnerabilities. Because from my understanding, he was in a room and he assembled, he put together that was in a bag a gun, and he got on a train and got down there to Washington. Now, to be fair, it's a hotel, so you do have the ballroom, but other individuals who are still, booking a room and have a room booked at the hotel. It's business as usual. Business has to go on. I get that. But I'm just giving you the context here. And this is where it doesn't fully add up for a lot of people because you got one of the most protected environments imaginable. And yet something still got that far enough to trigger this kind of response. From my perspective, that doesn't mean security failed completely. It means security is complicated, especially in environments that are constantly moving and changing. A strong line to remember is the more complex the environment, the harder it is to control every variable. And another way to put it is, you don't notice the gap until something tests them. I mean, it definitely validates the point of the ballroom that President Trump has put in place to be secure and bulletproof and things like that. So incidents like this won't happen again at the Hilton. Not saying it's the Hilton fault, but it definitely substantiates his point of the ballroom being done. Now, and as the story continued to develop, you're also seeing speculation start to build of who the person was and what was their motivations might have been. And look, it's natural for people to try to make sense of something like this by connecting it to bigger narratives or patterns they already believe in. But here's what people miss. When information is still coming in, jumping to a firm conclusion too early can lead you in the wrong direction. Because if later facts don't line up with that initial assumption, it becomes harder to adjust your view. And this is how you end up with people talking past each other instead of actually understanding what happened. The more useful approach is to focus on what's confirmed, watch how the details evolve, and then draw conclusions once there's a clear picture. That doesn't mean ignoring the bigger questions. It just means timing matters when you're trying to answer them. Now, stepping back and looking at everything we covered, here's what stands out. You had a high-profile event, a sudden and serious security incident, a rapid response that likely prevented something worse, and a wave of information, some confirmed, some not, spreading in real time. And layered on top of that, you got an environment that, by its nature, is harder to fully control than people might expect. That's how you end up with a situation that feels both shocking and confusing at the same time. So, the key takeaway here is moments like this aren't just about the event itself. They're about how information spreads, how decisions get made under pressure, and how people interpret what it means all afterward. It means afterward. It all means afterward. And if you can understand those layers, the whole situation starts to make a lot more sense. And instead of reacting to the first version you hear, you are actually thinking through what's real, what's unclear, and what still needs to be answered. Now, and it also raises because you have to look at it, and I see a lot of individuals saying this, and it raises the question, and we having a conversation. I'm not telling you what to think. When you have the mainstream liberal media, like I said, you don't have to agree with President Trump. You don't have to agree in how he do things. You may have not voted for him. But at the end of the day, the process took place and the American people voted on what it is, as we are in a constitutional republic. But also to those who may be Democrat, democracy, right, is based on popular vote. So the American people, based on popular vote, we have also what the process from the constitutional republic being upheld, of us being a constitutional republic, is the American people voices the vote, and the vote, which was popular vote by democracy, has voted for President Trump. So I'm saying all that to say that also you have the mainstream liberal media, or the mainstream media, mainstream liberal media, mainstream networks predominantly, calling Trump out. He's a fascist. He's a Hitler. He's all these things. And it was once said that if someone's after you or they're an enemy, they will tarnish your reputation to make you something to others that you are not. And others have been saying that the mainstream liberal media has been fueling this outrage to our president And this is our leader who leads and governs the United States on the behalf of doing all these things at once, making decisions and having to deal with things and make immediate decisions in 5 minutes that you have to deal with in a lifetime, to the point of tarnishing our leader. How do you think other countries look at us? Chaotic, confused? But also, how do you think the pressure of others who take that and feel empowered to go after our leader who has been elected? That raises real concerns. How would a country or would other countries see it acceptable if the popularity of the vote and the people have spoken to vote the elected official in? Should it be okay for the media to continue to promote their bias to the point of even tarnishing the leader and weakening their reputation by calling them things of which they may not be, just because they don't take a liking to the leader? Wouldn't that discredit or disregard what the American people have said? Let alone, wouldn't that be treasonous or going against the leader instead of having productive conversations as they have as the mainstream liberal media and the mainstream media? And I call them liberal because they come off bias. But there has to be a fine line here. When does it come unacceptable to put the leader of your country at so much risk by tarnishing their name even more to then enrage certain people that may not like or agree, but we can agree to disagree? But how about promoting productive conversation is my point. And the mainstream media have the privilege because they can see and they have access and they have opportunities to ask the productive conversation instead of looking for answers to shape the reality of narrative to get perceptions for individuals to fuel this rage. But let me know what you guys think about all this. Do you think that the media played a part in this? Because I'm seeing a lot of people say yes. And do you think by the name calling and calling him, the No Kings protest and the Kings and Hakeem Jeffries saying this?
We are in an era of maximum warfare. Everywhere, all the time.
So if someone supports a Democrat or, rock with Hakeem Jeffries, you're allowed to rock with who you want to rock with. Maximum warfare, do you think they wouldn't take that to the head and say, okay, that's approval to go and fuel violence and outrage? So take it a step further, my question would be now, is it fair, as we're displaying confusion and also tarnishing our political leaders who are our public officials who we have elected to take office, does that make it right for another individual who is in Congress or somewhere near the president to continue to, even if he disagree, tarnish the president's name instead of speak on policies and things for productive conversation, but enrage supporters who may rock with Hakeem Jeffries to go against another political leader to the detriment of even violence? Where's the fine line? Let me know what you think, family. As always, we're just having a conversation. I hope you guys, got your juices flowing, got your thinking going. I do all of this just to have a productive conversation. We could disagree to agree or agree to disagree, but just to think about it, right? But if you enjoy more breakdowns like this, I hope this helped you understand it better. Let me know what you think and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Jeez, it just got me so shooken up. But let me know what you guys think, family. At the end of the day, he's a person just like we all are. Peace.